You know, like a lot of people, just trying to process the emotions and what you were feeling, and sometimes it's easier to write it down than to express it. So I wrote this thing and we just gave them out. It's just kind of a sentiment that I had. I will run in the dark before dawn. I will run in the noonday sun. I will run in the bitter cold. I will run in the stifling heat. I will run even if I'm tired. I will run even if I ache. But I will not run away. I am Boston. I will run.
As far back as a little boy, I've watched it on TV, and it's just such a magnificent event.
I hear people talk about it all the time, like, oh, you're running the Boston Marathon? It's a big deal.
So last year's marathon, it started out really the perfect weather. Everybody was enjoying themselves. Me and my partner were on Berkeley and Stewart Street at the family greeting area. So it was probably the happiest place on earth at that time, because people had just crossed the finish line.
It was a beautiful day. There were people everywhere. It was my first year going to the finish line.
Kate had been standing on my right-hand side and couldn't see the street very well because a girl was holding up a pink sign and Caitlin couldn't see by it. You know, I offered to switch sides with her, which we did, and literally right when we switched sides is when the first explosion happened.
It sounded like a cannon.
Leo and I were blown about 2 feet apart. There was glass all around. I tried to turn over on my forearms and get up.
I was yelling at her to stay down. I just had a feeling, I guess, that there would be another explosion.
12 seconds later, same sound. You know, Zone 1 to UCC, what was that?
One question I've been asked a lot is, you know, did you know it was a bomb? And I knew right away.
It felt very surreal.
She was yelling at me that I'm hurt, you gotta get me out of here. And when I got off of her, she was actually trying to get up.
And I realized I couldn't step on my right leg, and Leo saw it right away.
At this point, I was starting to get really, you know, obviously I was shaken, and I was getting really nervous because, you know, it was pandemonium.
What I've been hearing from eyewitnesses, so again, this is unconfirmed officially.
Somebody asked me for help with a tourniquet. From that point on, it was just one patient to the next, to the next, to the next. There's a point of like disbelief, but right away you gotta snap out of that because there's a lot of people who needed our help.
130 victims are being transported to 6 area hospitals.
We pulled up in front of the hospital, and you know, I drove like 50 miles an hour into Mass General with the horn beeping, and you know, once all of that madness kind of happened, they got her onto a bed. That's when I kind of, you know, I remember falling into the chair in that room, like, wow, how did that what happened?
A couple hours sort of after everything had happened, the news had released, like, oh, an 8-year-old boy.
Police have confirmed 3 people were killed by the explosion.
My initial thought actually was like, wow, I wonder if I know him, because I've been teaching in Boston for a long time. When I found out, it just completely floored me. Not only to hear about my student, but also the other injuries. It was probably a night I'll never forget.
To have that innocence or that quality of it ripped apart is it's just a shame.
You know, we all ran the right direction, and you know, I just gotta I take that the worst thing I ever saw brought out the best thing that I ever saw, and so I just tried to build off that inspiration, and I think that's what got me to run the marathon this year.
So I got a letter from the BAA telling me that I would get 2 free entries into the marathon this year, and it never crossed my mind to run.
I never was a runner before, but I saw so many people running the marathon that weren't runners either.
And I remember saying to myself, you know, what's your excuse that you're too lazy to train? Like, that's just such a pathetic excuse. So I made the decision that night that I was going to give it a shot.
I feel lucky that I wasn't injured and I have a healthy set of legs. And in a way, it kind of feels like my responsibility that I need to be using them to the fullest of their ability.
Martin was really into sports. He loved all kinds of sports, and he ran track and baseball and everything. And he said to me one day, he goes, "How old do you have to be to run in the marathon?" And I said, "Well, let's look it up." And he looked it up and he goes, 18, okay. And he goes, "Well, when I turn 18, we're gonna run our first marathon together." And so I was like, okay, that should give me enough time to prepare. I didn't necessarily plan on it being this soon. You know, I've called on Martin a lot to help me get through those really long runs and, you know, feel like this is exactly what he'd want me to be doing. This marathon in particular, I think, is going to be really meaningful. So, and, you know, we'll get to run it with Martin.
I mean, the slogan Boston Strong came out, and it's just so true.
We don't run away. It's just not going to change us to be intimidated like that.
We had to become stronger, and we did, and now it's, you know, we're like a superpower, you know. You know, people make the comments about like, oh, you know, life comes around full circle. There's nothing in the world that can compare to this to me right now. Like, from finish line to finish line a year later, it's just like a whole revolution. The negative side that I'm trying to transform into the positive. So crossing the finish line this year, and not only that, but I'm going to continue right over to the family greeting area where I was when I heard the first explosion. And that's my second finish line. And I'm going to take a moment there and just reflect. And I'm not sure what's going to come of it, but I like the becoming part of it.